going live and says, you are live. Hello and welcome to Grace of Westminster Friday live stream. It's Kon here. It's Gray, the man, the camera shop, the legend is here. And it's a Q&A with Gray Levett today because it's your rare opportunity to ask questions. Will it be technical questions, let's say, on Nikon F cameras, or let's say, or even Z8, who knows, or some questions what he thinks about the future of Nikon and things like this. So come join us, come to the live chat. Thank you everyone for joining us today. I hope you enjoy it. How are you, Gray?
I'm fine. Hello everybody. Welcome to the Friday Fandango. It's good to see you all again.
Good to see you all. Hello, John, Simon, Olaf, John Rayleigh, Magnus, Andy, Rigetti, John Hughes, Jacob. Fantastic. There's quite a turnout today. Richard, David, Colin, Tom, Tadeusz, Christopher, Gary, Mark, Len Oshman, Dave Walker, Nick Harrison, Jay Blue. Fantastic. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining us today. As I say, normally we talk about history and things, but today we're going to answer your questions. So if you have any questions, definitely do let us know in the comments below. The coffee fund is open as usual. Let's start. So while I'm gonna look at the chart, Gray, and a lot of people think I'm just looking at my phone when I listen to you. It's actually I'm looking at the chart and I'm looking at your questions here. So if you want to participate, definitely do it now. Put QQQ right in front of the questions, first of all, and then that way I can easily see them in the chat. So great.
Yeah.
First question from me. So what do you think about these current rumors that are going online? So there's a couple of rumors there. Let's start with first article, which says Nikon is going to have a slow year this year in terms of announcements.
I love the way that these people make they make up a headline, really. It's sort of like the low-key version of these scandal mags. You know, it's kind of a clickbait of, oh my God, why are they going to have a slow year? They don't know. They simply don't know. They're not working for Nikon. They haven't run a corporation for over 100 years. Nikon largely know what they're doing, and I don't see any reason why there would be any problems. We haven't come across it.
Let's have a look now. How's it now? The volume for Gray. We've checked that it was working. It's clearly disappeared, but hopefully it's working again.
Okay.
Test.
Yes, test. Hello, Hammersmith.
How's the sound?
Is that better?
Gray's turned up to 11, just so you know. Can't turn him up even more.
That's the Spinal Tap reference,
exactly.
Isn't it? Yeah.
So we were basically, this is Nikon Rumors article, me and Gray. So I use new modern words like decent and stuff. So, but what Gray was saying is he thinks that, you know, a lot of publications that publish damaging rumors like this are in the game of clicks and clickbaits more than anything else. I absolutely agree with you. I think if we look at this year, even let's say as a Nikon entry into video system, I think it's going to be a very good year for them. Maybe it's not as exciting for photographers, but Nikon bought Red. We all know this. That's happened, a year ago or so. And in terms of this, we are expecting to see either a camera or a new line of cameras that are designed for that. And I'm sure there's going to be some stills cameras and lenses that will be interesting to you. So the recent rumor that came out, actually not on Nikon Rumors, but on Canon Rumors of all places. Can you imagine this? I read everything.
Do you?
It's just, you know, it's all habits of Nikon Report, if you see what I mean.
How do you have the time?
All the time in the world, you know, for Nikon Rumors. But according to Canon Rumors, they say that Nikon will announce the 35 1.2 lens before the big Japanese exhibition, which is on 27th of February. What do you think about this? It's been rumored, it's been on a roadmap for about a year, but then it's kind of disappeared. What are your thoughts on that?
I don't think it's much of a surprise that if and when it comes, everybody seems to be talking about it, as far as I could see, and it will be a welcome addition, I would say.
Fantastic. I absolutely agree with you. I think, well, I don't know if it's going to come out before 27th of February, but it's been rumored for a while, so why not? I think it's the only one that's quite easy to predict. Let's see more of your questions here. So just Simon Ma says, good morning, Kon and Gray. Thank you, as always, for hosting live stream this week. What do you think about the Nikon rumors, which we've discussed here? And hope everyone enjoyed Chinese New Year. Hope you too as well. What John is asking, what will new cameras be like in 5 years? They're so good now with IBS, speed, frames per second, focusing, image quality, and also high ISO performance. What is next? 12K video, what else?
That's quite a question, isn't it? Because I remember a number of years ago, I think it was the Nikon D810, and I was talking to Joe McNally, that many of you will know, famous American photographer, Nikon ambassador and author. And I said, what do you think future editions of this camera will be like? And he said, well, I agree with him at the time. I think the features can only be incremental. And then a while later along came the D850 and blew us all away. And in my opinion, probably the best of all the Nikon DSLRs, if not the best all-round DSLR of any brand. And although DSLR sales have declined with the onslaught and of mirrorless, it's so hard to predict, isn't it? Because it's a bit like doing I Ching or something like that, or going to visit a fortune teller. You don't know, and unless you have access to some of the idea merchants at Nikon, what they work on. It's actually only when we look at the past. For example, in the Nikon Museum, they've got all sorts of prototypes of cameras, and back in the days of the f2, they developed an autofocus lens for the f2. It never saw the light of day, but they did make one.
So we assume that this research and development went eventually into f3 AF at some point.
Yes, yeah. Which, was a clunky old beast, wasn't it? But it was them dipping their toe in the water, as it was, and it was ungainly. And when you pressed autofocus, it gave you a first glimpse of what eternity might be like while it sort of tried to get focus. But I got an affectionate feel for it. In fact, I've just bought one, which we'll have soon, but it's supposed to be like new in a box. So I'm looking forward to that, because I do have someone who's chasing me for one. Yeah.
How many collectors? You're saying someone is chasing. Yeah. So obviously we work with quite a few collectors.
Yeah.
It's in the shadow world.
Yes. Yeah.
How many requests do you generally get a month for specific very rare items?
Excuse me. It varies really. I have someone who's kind of got a standing order for every unused, boxed, mechanical Nikon or lens made. He'll buy it, and it'll go to them. And there've been many collectors. There's one gentleman many years ago who lived overseas, and he asked me if I would do an estimate of his collection. And he owned over 2,000 Nikon bodies and lenses. And some of them, the very early ones, he had some sequential serial numbers. So let's say the first Nikon F was 64000001. He had sort of 6400, and it might be 14, 15, and 16. And so he would then look for sequential serial numbers of lenses. In fact, he and another collector who was from the Far East, they would vie with one another at auctions, generally driving up the prices. They didn't do themselves any favors, but I remember I had a visit from this gentleman with the 2000 Nikon collection, and while he was there, the phone went, and this other collector was on the line, and he said, "Who are you talking to?" And when he found out, he said, "What's he buying?" Well, you know, and he got into just
beating war.
It was a bidding war, but the gentleman with the large collection, he obviously was very, very well heeled, and so he would buy ephemera, you know, every brochure, every workshop manual. So he had everything. I thought I had a pretty decent archive, but you know, I was the Cinderella of archivists compared to him, because we're not a museum, we are a commercial enterprise, and but we do keep some things which are not really for sale. Not that they necessarily have a market for them, but people love to see them because they haven't seen anything quite like it. In fact, we had two distinguished visitors from Japan this morning, and they were blown away when they came into the shop, and they said to me, "We don't have anything like this in Japan except in our museum." And so what you sometimes get is, would you look out for so-and-so? And you may not see one for a couple of years. And 2 years later, they may no longer be interested. I do have a bit of an anecdote if you want to hear it.
Absolutely.
I guess it was about 20 years ago, and someone rang me up and he said, "Oh, you're my last resort." And he wanted this Nikon accessory. And he said, "I've been looking for this thing. I've advertised. I've traveled to camera fairs. I've been in loads and loads of shops. I've lost count, and I've been looking for one for years. Have you got one?" And I said, I'll just go and check. Offhand, I can't think of it. Anyway, I looked amongst our sort of back area, and I found this accessory. And he said, "My God, you've got it. How much is it?" And I said, "I don't know, £7, including the postage." And he went, £7? I'm not paying that. And he slammed the phone down on me. So it's funny, really, because it's a bit like, I used to be in the second-hand book business, you know, and buying and selling rare books.
So there are different editions, different bindings.
That's right. You get first editions. You get publishers' proofs.
Just like vinyl.
Yes, that's right. And so someone might say, "I would like a copy of The Big Sleep by Raymond Chandler, sort of hard-boiled detective fiction, and portrayed so memorably by Humphrey Bogart." And they'd say, I want a first edition, but I want it in an original dust wrapper. And even better, if it's also signed by the author. And sometimes these people, they were feverish about getting these things. And, understandably, when you got it for them, they, "Oh, yes," and they'd pay their money and they'd take it and they'd go, "Oh, that's fantastic." And they'd put it on the bookshelf, and then it would disagree with them. It was like, what the joy was the hunt.
That's right. That's right.
You know, it's the looking, I think.
Some people in the chat are asking, what are your secrets in finding rare stuff? Do you have spies everywhere looking for Nikon?
Well, it's like anything in this life. I remember the photographer, the late photographer, the great Terence Donovan. We were chatting, and he said, "Gray, do you know what my most valuable possession is?" And I said, "I have no idea, Terence." And he said, "This is my contact book." And he said, "Those names are people that I've met over the years, established a relationship with them." And really, that's all we've done. We've established contacts over the years, as one naturally does, and develop relationships. And it's a very important part of the activity, because they help you and you help them in return. And he's told me this interesting story. And this was in the days of, I think he had the F4. Mm-hmm. And he got this job, one of the Japanese airlines. It was a major anniversary. And he was hired to photograph every single employee, of which there were thousands.
Yeah.
And each one of them would be given a special wallet with their picture in, taken by, the legendary Terence Donovan. And he said, so he had a kind of a tent made up. This person would come and sit in it, a bit like a photo booth. Mm-hmm. And he would shoot. The minute he'd finished his he'd hand the camera to his one of his assistants who'd already loaded up the next F4, and he just went on like this. And I said, good grief. I said, how do you work out a price for that? And he said, I didn't charge them anything. Mm. And I said, really? And he said, what they offered me was for the rest of my life, myself and my family could fly anywhere in the world on any airline, first class, and they'd pick up the tab.
That's amazing.
Isn't that a great story?
But you mentioned the visitors from Japan this morning,
yeah.
And I think it's always an honor that our shop is being selected as a part of the visit of Japanese delegation.
Yes.
These things, as you mentioned, it's networking and it's building relationships over the years.
Yes. And of course, it's really easy because you're interested in them and what they do, and they sometimes work in some, into some very interesting areas. And if I'm looking for something and I can't find it, or I'm trying to find out a piece of history. For example, in New York, at one time there was a Nikon school. And a great many photographers that I know, very well-known photographers, got their earliest lessons in photography at Nikon House in New York, which eventually moved. And the photographer and writer, Robert Faulkner, is going to do a piece for Nikon Owner, and he's doing a lot of research. But trying to find sometimes this information where, say, an organization like Nikon USA don't appear to have an archivist, so that would collect information or deem it even as important to do this. And it is really important. It's a bit like over here we have obviously the BBC and we have radio, and sometimes one of the channels I listen to, one of the radio channels, is Radio 4 Extra, and they have these old radio shows from the 60s and 70s and things like that, and occasionally they'll say, we found a lost broadcast because someone at the time recorded it off air and then sent it into them, and they cleaned it up. So if you don't create it, your public becomes your archivist.
That's true. It's interesting, as you say, because it's so easy to miss those little things when you build in something and not paying attention to it, and years after to notice, those actually were stepping stones. It would be great to have them documented. But there was one show actually I was trying to find on the internet. That was probably was Danger Mouse or something like this.
Oh, right, yes.
And some episodes were lost because they've lost the tapes.
Yeah.
They weren't digitized at the time.
Yeah. Well, the BBC used to wipe all the programs.
To save on tape?
To save on tape.
Oh, dear. All right, let's look at your questions in the chat here. Just going to say thank you very much, Jay Blue. He says, hello to Gray and Kon on today's Friday Fandango. Enjoy the coffee. So there were some mic issues. Hopefully you can hear me and Gray as well. I know that you can hear me from Los Angeles. That means I speak very loud. Quick question, Gray. What cameras are you currently using?
Oh,
Andy Hayter.
From who?
From Andy Hayter.
Oh, Andy. Well, oddly enough, although I'm playing around with various Nikons, quite recently, because he badgered the life out of me, Derek Cook, who was my first customer, and I may have mentioned him before, I told him that my first twin lens reflex that I owned was a Rolleiflex T, which was wasn't the top of the line, but the next one down. It had a Tessar lens rather than the more expensive Zeiss Planars. And you know, when I went out with that, the first time I ever went out with it was one Sunday morning. And I was walking through this park in Bournemouth, which is on the south coast of England. It was autumn, and I saw a park keeper with his bicycle in the distance. There was mist coming through the trees, and I just did a grab shot. And I'd sent off the film for processing, and then the lab called me and said, "Can we have this image for our marketing?" And I took some of my favourite pictures on that particular camera. And I was always slightly disappointed that I sold it. So, badgering Mr. Cook, as he is, I recently acquired this, which is a Rolleiflex 2.8 GX. And it's actually getting used to it again. We really don't appreciate how lucky we are now, because if you look down here, you kind of get a reversed image. Do you know what I mean? And mine also had a prism finder, so you had a pentaprism, but still the image was reversed.
So you almost have to rewire your brain.
You do.
When you're composing.
You do. And I went out to take some pictures, and I'd completely forgotten how to use it properly.
That's absolutely beautiful camera.
It's beautifully do.
And it's in very nice condition as well.
It's flawless, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely flawless. I've been playing around with a couple of the mirrorless models, but honestly, I find, you know, with this place and with Nikon Owner, which I edit, is so full time that I sometimes just don't have the time to do the photography I'd love to do, really.
But you do have a camera which is on that desk over there, which you take with you every now and then. And it's a Coolpix tough camera. I think it's a W series one.
That's right. Yeah. We've got I think it's a W300.
W300.
Yeah, and it's sharp as a tack.
So when you do your snorkeling and diving,
yes.
it's always with you.
Yes. Yeah. No.
When you climbed in an Everest.
Yeah, there's Cousteau. In fact, I'm reminded of it because quite recently we've had quite a lot of interest in acquiring Nikonus 5s.
Oh yes,
the amphibious camera, and you know, no sooner do we have one, and it's gone.
That's true. We went quite a few.
Yes.
Of those. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
In fact, we had an olive green one, which is recently.
That was sold last week, I think.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, that's right. And the minute that happened, I got a call from another collector and said, "Oh, if you get an olive green Nikonus, I want one." So I search everywhere for them.
Well, you have to choose one. Will it be orange, black, or olive green?
Oh, for me, I think olive green, because I think if you weren't fortunate enough to go overseas, if you were snorkeling around Britain, I don't know whether certain of the depths, whether it being orange would be a much help to you.
That's true.
But I mean, it's the look of the camera, really. I think they're
fantastic. Okay, let's go through more of your questions. We're going to go through the chat real quick. So, David Ransom says, Bill Gray's Beard Photography Show in London this year. I might pop in. I don't know, Gray, you planning to go? I think it's in Excel in March this year. Used to be in Birmingham.
Yeah, I'll probably totter in. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we won't be showing there because trying to duplicate this play. If that's, I mean, do they have camera
Nikon is gonna have a massive stand. All manufacturers generally do, yeah.
Yeah, but not individual camera shops?
Well, I think Wax, last time I was there about 2 years ago, if I'm not mistaken, Wax was there. Could be Park as well.
Yeah, it's it's incredibly expensive putting these events on and moving all the equipment out there. I've never felt the desire to do it. I enjoy wandering around and looking what everyone else is doing.
Definitely. I mean, you can always, we always try to pop in on those things. Like photography show, me and Becky, we went a couple of times and filmed there.
Yeah.
We always go to Photographica.
Yeah.
To see if to find some rare stuff. But whatever is happening photographically around London, we generally try to pop in and have a look. Actually, there's British Society of Cinematographers show will be, I think, on between 13th and 17th of February in Battersea Park. I know that Red and Nikon will have a stand in there, so I might pop in as well. So at least it's in my calendar.
Well, that will be a good idea.
Fantastic. Let's have a look at more of your questions. J Blue is asking, does Gray think that Nikon will produce a new rangefinder Z-mount camera?
Yeah, I'd love to say yes, but I think the likelihood is a remote one, to say the very least. I can't see that they would have the appetite to do it. Do you?
I would love them to do this, but I agree with you. The chance of it probably 1 in a million.
Yeah.
Definitely, I think in terms of just kind of, good kind of goodwill points from Nikon user base. I think if they release camera like this, I'm sure it will have a dedicated group of people, just like people using ZF and Nikon DF.
Yeah, absolutely.
Speaking of Nikon ZF, Chris Clark has a question. He says, I have noticed that the price of Nikon ZF has dropped in price a lot compared to original price. Lots of use of word price in there. Is this a sign of Nikon ZF2 on the way? What do you think?
I have no idea. What do you think?
I think it's a bit too early for that.
Yeah.
I think there's other cameras that Nikon can look into that. So in terms of this, we always talk about, let's say, Z5 Mark II, Z9 potentially, to be announced maybe at the end of this year. ZF came out fairly recently. For the life cycle of camera like this, I think it's probably not written in the books for this year, but who knows, maybe in 2026.
It's got a following though, hasn't it?
Oh yes, absolutely. Very good. Kind of what I know that people can buy their latest and greatest cameras like Z9 and Z8. And they always will have this kind of, warm spot for Nikon ZF. And it's the camera that they'll choose to take with them, maybe on occasional walk. They're not going to go and bring Z9 for, let's say, for a stroll in the park. But
that's right.
ZF is such a beautiful camera. And then, obviously, we have lots of wide-length lenses which bring this manual focus film to those cameras. Spoke to one of the customers today who said he just loves 40mm on his Nikon ZF because it's a perfect all-rounder. So I think, it's one of the things. When the product is released, obviously they will charge a premium for it, and eventually it will go down in price and it will settle at a certain price point. And I think at this point it's kind of settled on that level, and the only way we'll see a drop maybe in the future is when ZF2 is eventually announced. But I personally don't think it's going to happen this year. J. Roth Photo Art is asking you, wouldn't you like to sit on the boardroom of Nikon?
What would I like to?
Sit in on the boardroom of Nikon.
It sounds like a fun idea, but as it will be speaking in Japanese, which I don't understand, certainly on my previous visits to Japan, there was usually an interpreter along, but I find now that a majority of the senior Japanese execs that visit us can speak English very well because it is the language of the internet.
Indeed.
Originally, when I went to Japan and met someone, there was usually a younger person who was a secretary or personal assistant that would translate for them. But no, they do. But obviously, in the boardroom, I don't think they'd want me in their boardroom, really.
You want Nikon Z rangefinder.
Yeah, that's it. That's right. And I normally get they publish a report of all their comings and goings, and they very kindly always send me a copy of the report.
It's normally quite a few pages.
Yeah, it's a book almost.
Absolutely. We used to go through that for the Nikon report.
Yeah.
It's a 3-minute segment and about 3 hours of preparation.
Yes.
No more. Let's look at more of your questions. So J Road Photo Art is also asking, what is the rarest item that you ever had from Nikon in your collection? Well, in the shop's collection.
The rarest? Well, there's a couple of things. We had a 6mm 2.8 fisheye, which is got a 220-degree coverage. So if you're standing behind it, looking through the viewfinder, it could get in the tips of your shoes. It kind of sees round itself, in other words. And we had one that turned up a number of years ago that was in untouched condition, and we announced it in, I think, in Amateur Photographer magazine, and eventually it was on sale for 100,000 and got snapped up. And that was my first experience of something going viral, because it was everywhere. I would get phone calls from radio and television stations asking for pictures of it so they could show it on the news. And I think also sometimes the people who collect these things collect optics, not just Nikon, but they would collect rarities. So that one, the Nikon S3M, which was their half-frame camera, which they only made 200. We actually have one at the moment with the S72 motor drive, because it will take 72 pictures on a 36 exposure roll of film. We've got an original motor drive for an F36.
That's right.
And it's the one with the Nippon Kogaku logo, because that was the original name of the company, which translates to Japan Optical, on the base. And it comes in a plain grey box, because in those days they hadn't yet started sort of having nice boxes with nice designs, until they enlisted the help of the brilliant designer Kamakura, who designed the Nikon logo, etc. And I've written about him in the past.
Indeed. So J Blue is saying Coolpix W300 in orange. It's brilliant for snorkeling and scuba diving. So you should try this. This is exactly the one that Gray has. The one in orange. And Lenoshman says, I still have my Nikon S3, great camera.
Right.
Let's have a look. Nigel Sutton is asking, will my SB20 Speedlight, oh, it's got technical now, originally bought for use on my F301 and F4S, work in my Z6II and Z9? Will it trigger and will it not damage Z cameras? Okay, I think I can answer that one. So I thought you would go towards film cameras, but I went to digital. They will fire, they won't damage anything. It's basically manual flash. You won't get any functionality.
No TTL.
No TTL, basically, yeah. So that's what it is. And he's saying is hit that like button, and we definitely would appreciate that if you would do that, because it spreads this video to other people who are looking for Nikon content, and because it's live, more people will join this live as well.
Thank you. That would be extremely helpful if you could do that for us.
Thank you very much. Okay, so let's see. So still audio issues. If you could tell us in terms of audio issues, so just can you hear us okay?
Yes. Can you hear us?
Because I can see that Gray's mic is working, and maybe transmitting my audio, but just briefly because the mics are too close now. So, but technically Gray's channel should be separate on this thing. Thank you very much, Gary. He says, Gray, welcome back to the live chat. Enjoy the coffee. What about segment on large and medium format Nikon lenses? Shall we have a live stream talking about medium format and large format?
Well, you could do that one on your own if you like.
I think I might need your help on that.
Well, I mean, I do remember them, but we didn't really do, because Nikon didn't make a large format camera, a lot of the market for those went to shops like Teamwork in London. And
that's right, they still exist, surprisingly. Yeah.
Oh, well, good,
yeah.
Good. Whilst in the past I've sold 5.4 cameras like like Linhoffs and MPPs and things like that. It's a rather specialised world, the large format. Occasionally we would get orders to supply them, and one particular chap who wanted to go into it properly gave me an order for 10 brand new large format lenses.
Incredible.
Yeah, he was going to do landscape work, but he wanted an arsenal, as it were.
Yeah, I do have 180 and 135 Nikon lenses.
Do you? Yes.
I would like to get probably a 90 for ultra-wide angles.
Yeah.
But they're beautifully made. I have a Linhof board attached to it, so it's got this beautiful logo.
Yes.
It just looks amazing on the camera.
Yeah.
Okay, let's look at more of your questions here and your comments there as well. Eat Me Raw says, just got F3 HP along with Voigtlander 40mm to take a break from my mirrorless systems. Had an amazing time bringing it out for a test shot.
An F3 HP?
That's right, yeah.
Yeah, great camera. Absolutely great camera.
Speaking of which, I think there was an article on Nikon Rumours stating that Cosina /forward Voigtlander has announced that they discontinued all their 4 Nikon f-mount lenses, so 28mm, 40mm, 58mm, which is a beautiful lens, and 90mm lens. So they apparently been discontinued. So if you want to buy one brand new, we still have most of them in stock, but it seems that they're pretty much the last of brand new stock and they will disappear soon. Let's look at more of your questions here. Jay Fielden says, neat thing, I have what is recorded as the last 2.8 centimeter f3.5 no bayonet screw of the assembly line before the updated design. I don't even know what this lens is, Gray.
Rangefinder?
2.8, 3.5?
Yeah.
Did they switch to millimeters during the rangefinder era, or it already happened when the F?
They were largely all in centimeters, really. I mean, even people who write about historical things, like Mr. Robert Rotoloni, who writes for or created the Nikon Historical Society, in his magnum opus, Nikon Rangefinder series. He always calls them in millimeters, but if you look on the lens, it'll always be in centimeters. And in fact, the early Nikon F lenses were all in centimeters.
Indeed, you mentioned Mr. Rotoloni, and I think you said that he's got a separate house just for all his Nikon gear.
I think, no, that's not him.
That's not him?
No, I shouldn't mention his name.
There's no Mr. Rotoloni.
No,
Don't come to his house, please.
Yes. In fact, I'm very sorry to report that that he is this month discontinued the Nikon Historical Society journal because the cost of him, it was costing him $400 extra per issue to create it, with I guess a diminishing demand in terms of memberships to the society and the people who are interested, and the mailing costs and paper costs are so ridiculously high at the moment.
You've been getting this magazine, you've been subscribed to it, didn't you?
Yeah, I've got everything since the issue 1.
Incredible.
And I mean, he's been doing it for over 40 years.
I think my thinking is, if you like something, definitely support it with your wallet. That's all I can say.
That's right, yes. And I mean, when you think the challenges of writing something new after 40 years about a subject of which he's covered it probably from every angle imaginable, unless someone comes up with, say, you know, they found a prototype that no one knows anything about, or someone says, oh, did you know that they, you know, created a sky camera which was taking 120 film? If you find one of those, that's extremely rare. I only know of 2 in private collections. I've never even had one in my hand.
How big are those cameras and lenses?
Like, I guess if you had it on its back, it would be about that high. I think. I mean, I'm taking a wild guess here, really, only because I've studied the pictures rather intently, really.
Very interesting. Thank you very much, Randall. He said this is wonderful owning a Nikon Retro DF ZFC, ZF, and to see how technology has improved. Cheers. Thank you very much, Randall. We appreciate it. There's an interesting question from Jim Orsetti. He says, how do you determine the relative worth of all the gear you sell?
Well, it's about, you know how they say the value of a house is location, location, location. In our case, it's scarcity, 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 and condition, condition, condition. And we used to find that when I sold, you know, secondhand books. It a scarce book might be scarce, but nobody really wants it. Or it might be rare because it's difficult to get hold of, and it has a following, and people want one and are keen to get it. There is a market value for these things, and you know, you see sometimes prices at auction where 2 or 3 people are fighting over something, and it tends to drive the price up, and then people have the idea that suddenly their own one of this is suddenly worth the same thing. Isn't necessarily so. It was for those people who were trying to buy it in the fever of the auction. I must have it. I must have it. I was talking to someone the other day, the brilliant guitarist Jeff Beck, who died a while ago, who was originally in a band called the Yardbirds, and went on to have a stellar career, generally considered even by his contemporaries as one of the greatest guitarists in the world. His guitars went up for auction, and I asked a few people, what do you think they'll go for? And the general estimate was no more than 1.5 million, and it went for over 7 million. So
it's quite a few more million.
Yes, because you know someone was there that I absolutely have to have it. I mean, it could be someone like the Hard Rock cafes or Hard Rock Hotel, and they think, oh, we definitely need Jeff Beck's guitar, and we can put it on display. It'll become a talking point. We've got Jimi Hendrix's guitar and Peter Green's guitar, if they have it. In fact, it's years and years and years ago, I knew a bookseller, an antiquarian bookseller, down in Bournemouth, and when he lived in Bournemouth, the Professor Tolkien, J.R.R. Tolkien, who everybody probably knows, wrote a number of things, including The Lord of the Rings, and he used to visit, and Tolkien showed him a letter that from a very, 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 very rich man overseas who knew that Tolkien had been working on this book called The Silmarillion, and said, I will send you over a case full of jewels and gold ingots and everything if you'll let me have a copy of it in advance. Now, Tolkien wasn't interested, but was it worth that much? Well, it was to that person.
To that person, what it is worth to you. Huh?
Yeah.
I mean, to add to this, there's also two different markets. There's a collector's market, which the prices are much higher there, but it would go for a specific item. Either it's been released that is, maybe it's a rarity of this item, maybe it's in a mint condition. But there's also a consumer market which relates to the current market value of the camera. So looking, let's say, at film cameras, for example, the value of those film cameras have gone up over the years because the interest in film photography has increased, let's say, in the last 5 to 7 years. However, it dropped dramatically about 15 years ago when everyone was switching to digital. With digital cameras, it's very different. Obviously, those D800 cameras used to be £3,000-4,000. Now they're worth about £600-700.
That's right. Yeah, and in fact, when digital came along, you saw all those labs closing down.
That's right.
And they were chucking out these enlargers into the tip, and now we've got labs starting up all over again. Although
Absolutely.
The costs are not slight, are they? Processing film. I tried to think what that roll of 120 will do in there that you gave me.
That's a good question. Well, the cost of that roll of film would be £8,
right? And
it would cost about another £10 to process and scan, to get the scanned version of it. The processing is about £5 or so. But yeah, that's what it is. There was another question which was from Tajish, and he says, if you would only have one DSLR camera and one lens, what would that be?
One DSLR?
Yes, a digital one, yeah.
D850.
And what lens?
Gosh, 24-70, 2.8.
2.8 is a good choice. Fantastic all-rounder. All right, let's see. Jay Blue is asking a question. He said, I'm interested in Gray's view of the consumer photography market overall. Is it healthy? If so, does the growth seem sustainable?
Well, I certainly hope so, for our sake. Although camera shops are dwindling, and as are photographic magazines, I think when I started there were 28 or 29 on the market, and they used to be quite thick. Now there's probably 5.
That's right.
About 5. Even in the grand old British Journal of Photography is now only in an electronic format. I mean, it could be that it will be down to a handful of well-organized camera shops. Whether they're sustainable, it'll be interesting to see. But with the investment that people like Nikon are making into their new headquarters, which was built brand new, and moving the Nikon Museum to part of the headquarters, it's pretty bullish. And I think their acquisition of Red shows where they're now willing to try different areas. In fact, a while back, do you remember last year we had the visit from the gentleman from Japan, the big boss who bought Red. And I think he sewed it all up in about 6 weeks. Yeah.
They had a chat on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's all been done.
Powerful. And as you say, there's going to be this thing in Battersea, and Red will... Did you say Red would be there?
Red will have a stand there, and Nikon will have a stand there, which is also an interesting sign of things to come.
Yeah.
But what I also want to mention, obviously, the retail business is evolving. What's interesting for us to see is that people still want to come in and want to try their equipment before buying it. Therefore, like if you're spending several thousands of pounds or dollars, let's say buying things from Amazon, if you never try them, you may not have a full opinion if that's the camera or lens that suits you and that suits your needs. So in terms of this, having the physical presence where people can come in and try equipment out and speak to people who know their stuff, it is quite important.
I know, it's very true. And it's a very different experience buying online to visiting a place where they're friendly and they're knowledgeable and they have the stock, and it's a bit like if you were, for example, wanted a suit from the Savile Row. You begin a relationship and with that tailor. that might develop over, many years. And certainly it's been true of Grays of Westminster. I've got people that I was looking after in other camera shops. I've got one or two gentlemen. Adrian Cochrane's one of them. He's usually a regular here, and he brought in a receipt not so long ago from I think 1973, where I'd sold him some Nikon equipment, and he, bless his heart, he kept them. But he's been looked after. He knows that. If we say something, because our sort of motto has been, the answer's yes, what's the question? And to look after people as best as we can. And I think it's when things go wrong, shows up the real strength of an organization is how they look after you. Do they value you enough to go that extra mile to make sure you're completely satisfied? And that's something I've endeavored to push here all the time, and be friendly.
Yeah, what I found is that if you need any help from all those big corporations, now you get to AI chatbot, which will basically, you'll go around circles before you actually get to a human being to solve your actual problem, which is quite strange. And just, send an email out to a real person or even talking on the phone, which you can, in the case of Grace of Westminster, you can solve your problem much easier and much faster.
Absolutely.
Let's go through your comments as well. So Michael Pye says, I love hearing Gray's stories and learning more about Nikon. Thank you for making this possible. I've been with Nikon since 1990.
Thank you very much.
Days Pass is asking, was the Nikon EM one of the smallest SLRs?
Oh, yeah, without a doubt. In fact, I think it was their first non-flagship model to sell over 1 million, and that gave them the finances to develop the F4.
How interesting.
Yeah, because when I went to the original factory, which is now closed, which was the Sendai factory in northern Japan, they had a number of the cameras that they'd produced there on the wall, and they did have a Nikon EM with various lenses, and the gentleman, one of the Nikon execs that was taking us round, explained how important the Nikon EM was to their future.
That's incredible. So EM was still made by Nikon. It's the FM10, which was produced by Cosina. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. I'm with you.
Yeah, and they didn't import them into the UK.
That's right. Sud here is asking, why is Nikon Noct 58 1.2 so expensive? Is it collectible?
The Noct Nikon, why is it?
Yeah, 58 1.2. Well, there's two versions, right? There's a film version and there's obviously a Z version. Let's talk about film version.
Well, the film version does have its followers, and the price has gone up considerably. It's a bit like the 13mm 5.6.
13mm 5.6. Never heard of this.
Yeah. It's the rectilinear one.
Oh, right. Okay.
So you've got super wide, but it's rectilinear. So
13mm or 5. I'm with you. Yes.
You're right.
Yes, now,
yeah. And that lens, they made, I think, about 250 of them, and the price has just gone up and up and up. The last one we had sold to a German collector, and it went for 29,000. I've just seen one go at auction recently, and it went for close to 50,000.
50,000.
But that wasn't an auction. So those are. But the 58 Noct has its followers. It is a beautiful lens. If you get one that's in flawless condition, it will command a higher value than one that's well worn, which you probably wouldn't want anyway.
That's right. And if you meant Z version, because it's not clear from your question, so here, then they literally, I don't think there's like more than 1,000 of 58 NOCs were produced for Z mount. And it's one of those kind of statement lenses, no compromise lenses, to see what Nikon Z mount can achieve. And the whole talk about when Nikon introduced that mount was it's one of the largest mounts among all other manufacturers. And generally, the larger the mount, the sharper the image you get, so the better image quality you get. And that was one of those lenses. So yes, there's a reason why it's so expensive, because it's effectively almost handmade and not mass produced. Let's look at more of your questions here, and let's see. So yeah, John Hughes kind of has comment on the retail here. Says, I like to try. I have one item in my hands before I buy. Now I have lost all my lost my local Nikon store. Now I have to go online. So that's the thing. So we are based in London. So if you can come to London, then definitely it was one of the things that people, when they travel to London, they come to our place. One of the comments actually was interesting about the photography show that will happen in March in Excel London this year. It used to be in Birmingham. Is that there were quite a lot of complaints from people who live up north, because Birmingham is kind of in the middle of UK. So, you know, people could come from London. It's about 2 hours by train, and from up north, and kind of being it London centric, it's an interesting decision. So I guess this year we'll show if it was a wise decision for them to.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, let's see more of your questions here. David Ransom says, I had Nikon EM. It was the only Nikon I could afford at the time. Been with Nikon ever since. And Dave Spas, who asked the original question about Nikon EM, he says, what advice financial move with the Nikon EM from Nikon? John Hughes says, I remember buying EM for my mom a long time ago.
Of course, it was a great way of getting people into the Nikon system at a reasonable price, and if they took to it, they would then gravitate to other more highly specified models.
That's right. So EM was kind of was sold alongside Nikon FM at the time, or?
Yeah, I think so. I think they. I don't know the exact dates of them, but they also produced a range of Series E lenses, of which there are 2 versions of each model, but I think the 70 to 150 was used by all the fashion photographers in New York.
That's right, and lots of Series E lenses were cheap at the time, but very
good
quality.
Yeah, very good quality. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, we are about to wrap up. Great.
Yeah, you
wanted to share something with us, right?
Absolutely. I'm going to put my specs on here. This is our 40th anniversary this year, and on Friday the 7th of February at 7 p.m. GMT, we're going to present a special live webinar broadcast. It's called Journey into the Wild, and it's by the photographer Deborah Sandage, and she's a Nikon USA ambassador. She's a professional photographer specializing in world travel and artistic imagery. She's an author, educator, and instructor. She's very well respected for her ability to blend the creative and technical aspects of photography, giving the viewer unique and fresh dimension illustrated in each subject photographs. Now, she's going to take us on a personal journey from photographing wildlife to travel far and wide while exploring creative and artistic techniques and delving into the world of wildlife from a film perspective. Along the way, she'll share, inspirational ideas and pro tips that will enhance your photography. Now, registration of the event will be £25 per person, payable in advance. If you're a subscriber to Nikon Owner magazine, that's what you'll get it for. For non-subscribers, it's £55. So if you want to register and take out a subscription to Nikon Owner, now normally it's £39, and it's a beautifully produced magazine, even though I do say so myself. But it's been going for over 20 years. But you can do so. There's a code on the stream here that Konstantin has fitted up.
So it's code spelled with a K, code, and the code name is Kon Live, and you can do all this at the website, which is called NikonOwnershop.com. It's under description under this video as well, so you can go there. Yeah, if you haven't subscribed, you can just add it to the basket, use Kon Live code to get a digital subscription to the magazine, and that will allow you to join the seminar for £25 as well.
Yeah, and if you're a subscriber or plan to become a subscriber, we're always interested in seeing your images. This magazine goes to people all over the world, and it's got the freedom really to talk about anything to do with Nikon. So we have people like Simon Stafford, who does these benchmarks, reviews of equipment, and Gillian Greenwood's interviews. I think it's worthy of your attention. But I hope you'll join us on February the 7th as part of our beginning of our 40th anniversary celebrations, and if you do, I look forward to welcoming you.
Thank you very much, Gray, and thanks for joining us today. It's been a pleasure.
Likewise. Well, thank you for hosting me. We
will try to get Gray as often as possible as we can, so depending on his schedule. But there's a lot more topics we want to discuss with you. I think one of the topics will be about the history of Nikon Owned magazine at some point.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
We can do this, and it seems like the large and medium format Nikon lectures is another topic.
Yes. Well, good luck.
Thank you very much, Gray. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Have a great weekend. Go take some pictures and share them with us. We will see you next week.
Yeah.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye, everyone. Bye-bye.